So my name is Alex. For the sake of easiness, you can call me Alex, unless you're from Scandinavia. My last name is rather hard to pronounce, so Alex, hey. I'm going to present to you on a topic about how to save time and do some tricks on surface imaging. Now this is also a session that might apply for all modern devices. So if you're considered how about my Dell XPS 13 and etc., you might steal and borrow from this session as well. But I use Surface, and Surface is a good reference product. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Well, as the nice gentleman in front of here asked where I'm from, so I'm from Norway. And for those of you, anyone here been to Scandinavia, Norway? No one. So Norway got approximately 5.25 million people, and that will be equivalent to South Carolina. And if we were to be adopted by either Hillary or Trump, we would be the 23rd largest state. And I always tend to like to compare sizes because the capital of Norway is give or take 1 million people. And I was lucky enough to visit this wonderful city in Texas, and they call it a city. Anyone been to Luckenbach? I had a couple of people at different sessions that been to Luckenbach, and they call it a city with a population of 3. There are more cats within the bar than there are actual people in the city. Other things that Norway is famous for without Opera, the browser, is Raticus norvegicus, which is the Latin name of the brown rat, which you find all over the planet. So in technically speaking, if you say we are rats, that would be kind of correct. Vikings, and we're also one of the largest exporter of petroleum. So that's to you, Texas. So I was once told that I'm supposed to give you like, what's in it for me kind of talk in the beginning. Well, what's in it for me? I get to go to Atlanta at Ignite, the most awesome conference on the planet, and talk to you guys. So that was easy. So I figured that I should tell you guys what's in it for you, not in it for me. And this session will show you some of the user-friendly ways to mass deploy devices in your organization that you might already know of, but not utilize. Or you might not know of them because you're afraid of them. Don't be. There's also some confusion when it comes to imaging of modern devices, and I also want to emphasize the thin versus thick. Now, most of you guys who've done imaging sessions know that there are thin images and thick images, but there's also various of thin images. So why did I do this session? Well, in Norway, even though we are about 5.25 million people, my IT department consists of 9 people, and I support 2,500 employees and somewhat 4,300 students aged 5 to 16. So the IT department and 9 people, you're looking at about 13% of the department right here. My employee was a bit ambitious. He wanted something fancy, so he said, hey Alex, we just ordered 1,000 Surface for the students. I think the media is going to like it. Our students are going to be smart. And he wanted to give them Office 365, no problem. But he forgot to mention that my office is connected by Radiolink. So my config manager location is kind of on a slow bandwidth problem thingy. And he was even generous enough to give me 15 Ethernet adapters. So for those of you who know Surface and modern devices, they do not come with built-in Ethernet. So you got to buy these external dongles or docking stations. So thank you, boss. So what they wanted was something fancy and funny, but what they in fact had was the aftermath. Please keep in mind, and this is not an imaging tips, this is just a common sense tip, that you're gonna experience when it's too late, plan waste management. I couldn't see out window for over 2 weeks. There were boxes everywhere. So, the shortcut, everyone wants the shortcut, right? Anyone here likes the shortcut? Okay, so what you can do is apply a thick image. Now, don't do drivers in the thick image. There are reasons why you shouldn't do drivers in the thick image when it comes to devices of the modern UEFI world. So don't think about Ghost, please. So what you might do is that you take a clean image, you apply that to a virtual machine with Windows Deployment Services or equivalent applications. You install updates and you create a capture. And that's perfectly fine. You got a thin image and that's good. But you can also apply the applications or business solutions and scripts and policies that might be equivalent or needed for your organization. There are many reasons why you want to do that. It's a shortcut, right? So it's kind of easy to get started on that. Windows Server 2008 with VDS or later. You don't need to upgrade to 2012 if you don't have to, want to, or don't have any licenses. This is just a shortcut to get you going. What you do need is, for the sake of Surface, you need the Surface Ethernet or Gigabit adapters or equivalent docking station because of secure boot compatibility. So if you buy a network dongle that do not support these things, you're out for trouble. So I'm just going to show you a very, very simple step, which probably many of you already seen, but I tend to like to show people anyway. So what you do, you install the feature, Windows Deployment Services, you apply your Windows 10 image to the Windows Deployment Services, you deploy Windows 10 on a virtual machine, you install all your applications, your scripts, whatever you wanted to do, no drivers please, and then you do a capture, and you got your golden image. So this way of do it, it kind of makes it rather easy in a way of, you got one thing going on, now you're ready for the 1,000 devices. It's a very easy shortcut to do it. You got one thing going, and you're good to go. What you simply does in the post operating system installation step is that you apply the drivers. The reason why you should do this is, like, some of you might have encountered this on other devices as well, but especially in Surface, is that Microsoft keeps up developing new UEFI drivers, like the BIOS update in the old days. So these are normally updated by Windows Update, and what would happen is, you do a thick image with the newest driver, so you do apply this image to your Surface device, and Windows thinks, I got the newest version. And when it tries to communicate to the hardware, it hasn't been updated. So first of all, you're going to have a mismatch on physical appearance of your version of the UEFI. And second of all, it will not update the driver because it's already applied. So in case you're having these experiences, Windows Update won't help you out until the next version of the driver's been released within a couple of weeks or months. So please don't do drivers unless it's post-OS deployment on the actual device, not in the golden image. So for the sake of shortcut, it's probably very nice to just make it simple. You could do that with the device, Ethernet adapters, one standalone server, and you're good to go. Now, shortcuts are kind of nice, but you don't want to show up to a wedding in your nice dress, walk 200 meters through the bushes, having blueberries on your dress. So shortcuts may save you some time when it comes to, okay, we got this problem, we need to fix, just make it happen. But you don't want to do that. You want to do the highway. So when it comes to thin versus thick, as I said, thick image is your applications, your scripts, your policies, whatever you applied. No drivers. When it comes to thin image, you have only the image, which you've done apply to a virtual machine and done capture, nothing else. But then you got thin image, which is updated Windows with a Windows Update. So many of you think that you can only insert the CD into a CD player, install Windows. and that works. You can create a bootable media with a USB jump drive, install Windows, and it works. Now, the way you might experience if you do that on deployment solutions is issues like you're not getting C drive for Windows installation, you get an X drive. Anyone seen that happen in real life? I've had. So you want to do this. So the thin image is like the bootable media, but you create a virtual machine to apply it and capture. So that's ready to go because you got a distributional image. The second one is also thin, but it's updated. Now, there might be reasons why you don't want to do the Windows updates. I can tell you why, but there have been updates that tend to break your applications. We've seen that in some of the patches that have been shipped. So that's the scenario where you want to go for thin. And then you got other scenarios where you want to apply .NET Framework 3.5 into your image, and you want to do the Windows updates, or at least a selection of updates that you know that's been secure and it works with your applications. That's also a thin image. But there's no applications, and in all case scenarios, no drivers, thank you. The thing is, even though you do the highway, you still need these kind of special devices. And again, the reason why is because of secure boot. So unless your Ethernet adapter supports secure boot, it's going to work when you boot up Windows. You plug it in, it finds as an Ethernet adapter. You find third parties that's really good, and they're probably cheaper, no problem. But when you do a power down, volume down and power up, you won't be able to PXE boot. So why add MDT to this? You could do Windows deployment services, and that's fairly easy. But the benefit of this is that you got Surface 3s, you got Surface Pro 3s, you got Surface Pro 4s, you got Surface Books, and I think there's something called Dell and Lenovo too. So the benefit of MDT is that whatever suitable solution you find for your organization and however you find it suitable to deploy it, make sure you keep your image up to date. So unless you're doing the very, very thin image of no patching, make sure that you always keep it on top because there's always being patches and security updates applied at any time. And a second thing is that who here is deploying build 10 to 40 of Windows 10 today? Like the first shipment? No one. Anniversary update, anyone? Most of you. So what you're going to see is that find the version you got and patch that to the level you need. And the benefit of this, you got only one image to take care of, that you need to care for. And MDT is also a very good solution to do application post OSD. So hence, no thick image. You do a thin image, you keep that one as your reference, you deploy that to all your devices, and then you add the applications you want. A different thing is that you can create a custom task sequence for each device, not only the device type. Let's say you have a Surface 3, you have a Surface 3, and you have a Surface 3. You in fact have a Surface Book, but let's say it's the 3. So by identifying the serial number located beneath the kickstand on the Surface 3s, you can add these to MDT and create a custom task sequence attached to that very device. So without having to touch the device, you can pre-populate a task sequence specified for his, her, or her device, make the device ship to the person you love, make him or her connect the Ethernet adapter and do it herself or himself. Because the task sequence has already been pre-selected in MDT's database. You can also add Windows features like someone want .NET Framework for applications, somewhat Hyper-V for some reason. Anyone use Hyper-V? I'm happy. And a lot of other built-in Windows feature, and it's simply a mouse click. So the freeway is not like a lot more complicated. It's still the same server, and it's still, I recommend doing Windows deployment services as well to do the PXE boot for you. But now you added MDT on this one as well. And the reason why this illustration is a bit more descriptive is that you get to access the internet for Windows Update as part of the task sequence. If you embed Office 365, you can do that as well. So keep in mind, why did I do this in the beginning? I mentioned something about my boss being very generous. My office was located with a radio link. So what I did, and the benefit of doing this with MDT the way I did, was that I downloaded the golden image file. I updated that. The anniversary update is being updated to the latest patch level. I also downloaded Office 365 with the latest update level, and I applied these from the server to the clients without using the radio link, which again is connected to the internet. So these are the really pros for the selection. I wanted to tell you one more detail about why I selected MDT. Who here do Config Manager for deployment of operating system? Me too. Problem about doing Config Manager for Surfaces is identification, because Config Manager's default behavior is to use the MAC address. And where do you find those? That's the 15 of them I got. So that would mean that all my 1,000 devices is going to get random selection of 15 numbers or names. So the fun about MDT is that you can pre-populate the database, which I just mentioned about the individuals. You can also pre-populate with name combined to serial number. So we scanned with a scanner, hand scanner, all the serial numbers on the boxes into the database, gave them the numbers, and we could potentially give them to the 5-year-olds to do the job, or the customer, or the client. Now, you cannot do that very easily in Config Manager unless you do a lot of tweaking, and there are workarounds to do that. Disconnect the Ethernet adapter, wait a couple of seconds to do the inventory scan again, and all those things. But again, this is for the sake of easiness. It's not for the high-level adoption. Oh, sorry about that. So what you're now going to see is not something I made for the demonstration. This is, in fact, my deployment share. Whenever it finds it fun to boot up. So this is 100% what I did for those 1,000 devices. So what I did was I created an assessment and see, okay, what applications do they need from me before they start using the devices? Now, from class 1 to 10, they're used in a lot of different applications. So I thought, okay, I don't know where these devices are headed. So I'm going to let Config Manager do that. The Config Manager team is going to do that. But what I didn't know was everyone was supposed to use Windows 10 Anniversary Update, of course with the latest drivers, and also they're going to use Office 365. So that in mind, I downloaded and applied Office 365, and I gave it the date I downloaded it so I can refer to it whenever there's a new update available. The operating system is, as you can see, the Anniversary Update. I created a virtual machine, booted it up, deployed the Anniversary Update, patched the image, and I also did, for this specific operation, apply .NET Framework 3.1 in that image. I would normally do that in the task sequence for deployment, but I did that in the thin image. And then I created a capture. The out-of-box driver selection would appear something like this. And this is the one tip I'm going to give you. Anyone heard and tried Hydration Kit, either for MDT or Config Manager? I see some hands. So there is this one tool, and if there's one thing that you are supposed to write down, it's Surface Deployment Accelerator. It's not something you necessarily want to do, but it's something that you definitely want to take a peek at and borrow some tips from. So what that does, it downloads Surface 3, Pro 3, Book, and Pro 4, and whatnot drivers. And they download the latest version. So you get all those things for free. You don't have to kind of find them, download the zip file, extract, and all of those kind of things. And what I did, I simply just copied the folder. Selected the folder, copy, and paste. Easy peasy. The second part that's neat about the Surface Deployment Accelerator is that you find those small steps in the task sequence. So those two steps I'm going to talk about, I've copied from the task sequence by doing right-click, copy, right-click, paste. And that is set driver group and inject drivers. So whenever you are doing your own steps in the task sequence, is this you want to do. Now you could do this to the custom settings that I need, but it's not necessarily that you want to do all the steps for all your devices, and the custom settings I need is going to be applied for everyone that boots up from this deployment chair. So what I do is that I do that as a part of the task sequence, and it's a very small procedure that's done. What this does is that it's going to recognize the make and model of your device. In this case, it will be a Surface Pro 4. In your case, a Surface Book, and for you too, it's a Surface 3, right? And it will apply the drivers in the folders that's named by the model. So make sure you create the folders by the model. The latter steps, that's kind of, I got this question from a guy the other day, and why do you install Config Manager? Like I said, we do Config Manager. Problem was Radio Link and identification. So I used MDT for OSD and Office 365 installation to reduce bandwidth load over Radio Link, but I wanted to do Config Manager for post operating system management and application management in order to install third-party tools and whatnot. So I do enroll Config Manager. It might be a different way you can do that by group policy discovery from Config Manager. I simply install it as an application. I did the same thing with endpoint protection. I install offline updates from MDT, and that is simply something you could do for the packages. You could go to Microsoft download site and download patches for Windows 10 and add those to the packages folder and apply those to that. There might be reasons why you want to do that, but most of the time you got to pay attention, download the latest update file, and make sure that you replace them. This was something that was rather more important at Windows 10 and Windows 8 because they had accumulated, like, who remembers the ages of 107 updates pending? Yeah. So at Windows 10, it's more like one big file, make sure that this one is being applied and life is just a good thing. So for this kind of task, I did that because this was something that was supposed to be for a short period of time, and this was a 250 megabyte file, and I was saving that for the bandwidth every time I did an installation. So now bandwidth is not something that's rather expensive nor cheap, but it's a payload that's going to burn down for 15 concurrent machines at the same time. So it will either halt your installation process, or it might delay it, or give a bad user experience for the other ones at the network. Doing the Windows update as a part of the task sequence is also something I recommend doing. Other than that, it's pretty much seasoning with the steps you want to do, like adding features, adding roles, or if you want to do scripts. You could. I was once told that the management console does what the management console should do, hang. So you could restart the computer, install Windows Update offline, or go to Windows Update and download those, and do this sequence in multiple concurrent steps. So restart computer, simply copy and paste, and you got a reboot computer after Windows Update. In case you want to check again for more updates, you copy and paste those steps. So no hands, and it's still up to date in case there are multiple updates. And in this way, you could apply .NET Framework, post operating system deployment, update .NET Framework, be sure that after the reboot, it also checks for further updates if there are. So that was pretty much the things I had to show and tell. If you got any questions, I'm going to stick around for some time. Thank you so much for your time and have a great night.